Welcome to the Security and User Permissions webinar. During today's webinar, you will learn the basics of managing user access to the Open Dental program. By the end of today's webinar, you should be able to add employees, create user groups, create users, manage passwords, define group permissions, and manage global permissions. So why worry about security? One reason is HIPAA. In order for your practice to be HIPAA compliant, a security risk analysis must be completed. Information and resources can be found on our HIPAA web manual page at opendental.com. Click the search feature in the top right-hand corner and search for HIPAA. There's also a link below this video that you can click on to go straight there. Ultimately, 3 levels of security will need to be addressed: network level and computer level security. Consult our website and your IT department. Individual program level security, that's what our webinar will be focusing on today, specifically for the Open Dental program. Security can help you prevent fraud and embezzlement. With the audit trail feature in Open Dental, you'll be able to track who did what and when they did it. The audit trail, however, only works when the system can differentiate between users. The main audit trail in Open Dental can be found under Tools and Audit Trail. You'll see here that it tracks the date, time, and patient, as well as the user who made the changes. If you do not have separate users in Open Dental that are each logging in under their own username, Open Dental will not be able to help you differentiate who did what. We also have an audit feature inside of the appointments. Double-click into the appointment and click in the Audit Trail button. This will allow you to track the appointment creation, edits, and movements. There's an Audit Trail feature in our Chart module under the Show tab. If I scroll to this procedure, you'll see the note that is currently there. Selecting the Audit checkbox will show what the note originally looked like, as well as edits that were made to it and who made those edits. There's also an audit trail inside of the Family module. Double-click into the Insurance and click on the Audit Trail button at the top. This will allow you to filter the date range for edits that were made to that insurance plan. And lastly, we have an audit trail feature inside of the tasks. Clicking on the History button will pull up the edits that were made to that task. Security can also help you use the time card feature in Open Dental. Time card security will not work unless users are properly set up and associated with an employee. If you're planning to use the time cards, please add your employees into the system first. This can be done under Lists and down to Employees. This will bring up a list of employees that are currently in your system, similar to an employee Rolodex. Clicking on the bottom left-hand corner button will allow you to add an employee into the system. Payroll ID box if you're using a third-party software to process your payroll. The employee's telephone number for easy access to contact them if needed, and then an email. You can even indicate who that employee is going to report to at your clinic. Once added into the system, they will be listed in the Employees section, as well as in the time card feature. You'll notice in here that it did not automatically update with my employee. If you find that you've added the employees to the system and they're still not showing in this window, select the Manage module button one more time to refresh the window again. Now that we've added the employee to our system, let's go over group and user management. This can be found under Setup at the top of Open Dental and down to Security. The first window is our Security Users window that will list any users you currently have in the system. The second tab is our User Groups tab. This is going to be where you create user groups to associate your employees to, the permissions for each of those user groups, and the users that are currently assigned to the user group. Permissions are not assigned to specific employees. Permissions are assigned to user groups. If each employee should have different permissions than other employees, you would need to create separate user groups for each employee. All permissions listed here are defined in our user manual permissions page. You can get to that page by selecting the question mark in the top right-hand corner, scroll down, and also see permissions page. Listed here is the description of the permission, the name of the permission as it shows in Open Dental, the internal name for programming purposes, and the behaviors column to show a description as well as a link to what that permission controls. Access controls, such as our EHR emergency access. Users without the permission can't even see the window. Editing of items, such as a fee schedule edit or a referral edit, almost always includes rights to delete the item. Users without the permission can still see the item, but will be unable to edit or delete. Creating new items, such as an appointment creation. Users without the permission can't even create the item. In this case, they wouldn't be able to create an appointment without this permission. And lastly, our setup permissions. Setup covers a wide variety of setup functions. Users without the permission will not have permission to access certain setup features. Oftentimes, the features will be hidden or grayed out to the user without permission. Now let's go over how to set some of these permissions for a user. Select the user group, and in the permissions column, you can use the scroll bar to scroll through the list of permissions that you want to either add or remove. Let's scroll down on our front desk group to our account module for our payment creations. Unchecking the box, such as our payment edit permission, would make it so that our front desk is not able to edit payments. If we want to give them that permission, we can simply check the box, and some of our permissions will have a group permission. This means that if I want to limit access for them to be able to edit patient payments, I can do so up to a certain date or an amount of days. For instance, if you set the days to 1, then the users within this group, which are Eleanor, Jan, Sally, and Samantha, would only be able to edit patient payments for 1 day. If you are trying to lock them from being able to edit patient payments, as an example for last year, to close out the year and make it so that only edits can be done by admin users, you could even put if newer than a specific date. Clicking OK will show you that they now have access to that permission and they can edit payments, but only until the end of last year. So only anything new to 2021. If you'd like to create a new user group, such as possibly a user group for an IT department or new employee that's being hired at your clinic, click on the Add Group button in the lower left-hand corner. Let's add in an IT user group to assign them to. Clicking OK will add it to your list of user groups. Currently does not have any users until you assign them to that group. If you want to set all permissions for a group, clicking on the Set All button is an easy way to add in all permissions and then be able to restrict them as you choose. You will notice that clicking on the Set All button at the bottom still does not allow this user access to the Security Admin window, unless you tell it that you do want them to have access to that. The Security Admin window is the window that we are currently looking at. So an IT department would have access to just about everything in Open Dental, but would not be able to change their own permissions. Let's also add in that new employee user group with the Add Group button. This is going to be where we put the new employee Natasha that we just added to our system today. We have our new group. So for our new employee here, we want to restrict it to only allowing them to do what we're currently teaching them. I'm going to scroll down to our appointment module here. We want them to be able to see the appointment module, but only focus on that module for now. You'll notice that there is a checkbox next to each one of the module features. This is an access permission, which means if they are left unchecked, your employee would not be able to even see within that module. We just want our new employee to focus on the appointments module for now and what can be done inside of the appointment module. So we're only going to give them access use to the appointment module, creating appointments, moving them, and editing them. We won't be going over every permission as that would take too long in this webinar. Please refer to website or call for help with individual questions. Now that we've created some new user groups, as well as the group permissions for our new employee, let's go into how to add her as a new user. Clicking on the Users tab in the top left-hand corner, we're going to add in Natasha into our system. To do this, we're going to click on the Add User button. We're going to give the user a name as it will be seen when she comes to log into Open Dental. We're also going to associate her to her time card. If Natasha was a provider, we'd also be able to select her as a provider here, specifically for access to things such as electronic prescriptions and being able to send out secured webmail. Now we need to associate Natasha to her new employee user group. Selecting the new employee group, you'll notice that permission checkboxes changed over on the right-hand side. Scrolling up and down will show what it is she's allowed to do within that group. Keep in mind that employees can be associated to multiple user groups. Now we need to create a password for Natasha. We're going to require from this section that Natasha creates a new password upon the first time that she logs into Open Dental. We'll create a temporary password for her at this time. You can use the show password if you want to make sure that your spelling was the way you intended to give her the password as a temporary. Automatic log off time in minutes, 0 is disabled, blank is the global value. You can set a time when, after a certain period of inactivity, Open Dental will automatically log off for this user. You can allow user override for automatic log off by checking it inside of the global security settings. You can also associate your users to specific clinics. This area is only visible if clinics is turned on. If a user is associated with a clinic, that clinic will be the default when the user is logged on. If a user is restricted to a clinic, that clinic will be the only clinic they can view. They will also be limited to their clinic only in the following areas of the program. They can only view and select patients associated to that clinic, billing for that clinic, reports for that clinic, view and send claims for that clinic, and the time card. The alert subcolumn can be found on our web manual page, but we will not be covering this feature in our webinar today. Clicking OK will add the user into our system over here on the left-hand side. You'll notice Natasha is the username for when she first logs into Open Dental, and then her employee is associated for her time card. You'll see here that her user group is showing as the new employee, which is the user group she's currently assigned to. Let's show you how to edit a current user. Eleanor here is currently one of the front office employees, but she's been trained up to also be our billing specialist as well. I'm going to leave her with the permissions the front office user groups have, but also add in the billing privileges that the other front desk staff members are not currently allowed to do. You'll notice the privileges over on the right-hand side. You can change or add to the user groups for an employee by double-clicking on them from this window, and also associating them to other user groups. This has currently increased what Eleanor is able to do. She now has more access inside of our account module to be able to handle things such as claims, while still being able to do the other permissions she had as a front office person. You'll notice now that I'm also in this window, if they already have a password as a user, we now have, instead of create password, a change password button. If for some reason Eleanor had locked herself out after too many attempts of trying to get into Open Dental, this would also give you the ability to unlock her account. You'll also notice from this window that Eleanor has a strong password marked as indicated. If passwords must be strong as checked, then passwords must be at least 8 characters and have at least 1 number and 1 uppercase letter. For HIPAA compliance, you should have an office policy that user passwords are never shared and that each user has a unique password that only they know. Some actions performed by a provider are the same as signing off, such as entering prescriptions. Having a unique password will protect patient data. To enable the login screen that I talked about earlier, you must first give your user named admin a password. I'm going to double click into our admin and change our password here to show you. Clicking on show to make sure that it's what I intended on typing. As long as the admin user has a password, when we close out of this window and click on the log off button, Open Dental will require that each user also has a password. Selecting our user from the list, typing in our password, and clicking OK. You'll notice the user that I'm logged in as shows in the upper left-hand corner. Now let's go over global security settings. Setup and down to security. In the top left-hand corner, we have the Global Security Settings button. Clicking on this will open global security settings that you can choose for your office. Timecard security enabled. If checked, users can only clock themselves in and out when logged in as themselves. This eliminates buddy punching. This checkbox also enables the next 2 options available for timecard security. Either users cannot edit their own timecard at all, or users cannot edit their own timecard except during the current pay period. Disable monthly backup reminders. Open Dental by default will try to remind you to run your backup of your database once a month. You can disable this reminder if you want to. However, we encourage you to develop a plan with your IT or your staff to make sure that routine backups of your database are still happening. Log off users on Windows Lock means that if you locked your Windows computer, Open Dental would also log off the current user. Passwords must be strong. If checked, each user would need to create a password of a minimum of 8 characters with 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase letter, and a number. You can also require for additional security that the passwords being strong also require a special character. The force password change, if not strong, means that any user who does not meet the requirements you've set above would be required to reset their password to a strong password and possibly a special character if this box is also checked. Manually enter logon credentials mean in that window that we were in just a moment ago, where you were able to select a username from the list and then type in a password. If this were checked, would require each user to type in their username and their password. Maintain selected patient when changing users can be very helpful within operatories where the assistant is signing out and the doctor signs in under their user to be able to maintain the same patient you were just in. The default user group, when creating new users in Open Dental, would default that new user to a group, you can still change which user group that particular user is assigned to within the user section here. Automatic log-off time in minutes. Set a time when, after a period of inactivity, Open Dental will automatically log off the current user. Enter 0 if you do not want an automatic log-off time. Allow user override for automatic log-off. Determines whether users are allowed to have a specific log-off time entered. The domain login. The domain login allows your Open Dental user to automatically connect with your domain login. Please consult with your IT before enabling this preference. And Global Lock. Global Lock prevents editing of old items and are the only way to prevent backdating of new items. The permissions grid on our website will identify which permissions are affected by Global Lock dates. The Global Lock dates override Group Lock dates. If you're going to use the Global Lock dates, you should also change the default setting for PPO write-offs so that insurance income reports use the insurance payment date instead of the original date of service when calculating write-offs. The advantage of this method is that history won't be changed, but write-offs may count against production many weeks after the actual work was done. In order to enable the Global Lock dates, click the Change button. If a date is entered, changes will only be allowed if the date of the item being changed is newer than the date entered. For instance, if I wanted to lock down all of 2020 and before, I could put in December 31st of 2020. Any changes made to items would need to be newer than 12/31, so the starting of this year, January 1st. If a number is entered in the days field instead, that will be the number of days an item would be able to be entered after the original entry date. So if you wanted to lock down 30 days, as an example, your item would need to be newer than the last 30 days. Many practices choose to close down each year by locking out the previous year. That will be the example I use today. Lock includes administrators, if checked, would apply the limitations to users in the admin user group as well. Click OK to save your changes, and click OK one more time to save your global security settings.
Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. If you have additional questions, please contact our support line at 503-363-5432 or access our complete online manual at opendental.com. And to make sure you're staying up to date on our latest training videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications.